Oh, see.
It's okay.
Right.
Let's begin. It's already on. Just start.
Okay, we are going to go brief. You're most welcome. Uh, Let me take this opportunity to welcome you once again on today's presentation, as we always do on each and every weekend. Today, we are going to specifically look at obesity and how it has impacted on the current healthcare system, or how obesity impacts on our health. Uh, of course, as we are seeing, obesity, its prevalence is going high and high, which has led to prevalence of non-communicable diseases. Of course, when I talk about non-communicable diseases, I mean cancer, diabetes, pressure, high blood pressure, of course, stroke, heart diseases, and other related mental illnesses. Of course, obesity has really played a pivotal role in increasing their prevalence, as per World Health Organizations says that non-communicable diseases actually accounts 71% of all deaths worldwide, and as well here in Uganda, non-communicable diseases accounts for 35% of all deaths in Uganda. You can see obesity as a, a major a major cause of these non-communicable diseases. That's why we have to focus on it to see how we can reverse obesity in the way that we can control non-communicable diseases. Uh, of course, as I introduced our presentations today, that obesity and its impact on health. Let's continue on the next slide, and we see what is obesity. Obesity is one of the most common preventable diseases. Actually, obesity defined as abnormal or excessive fat accumulation that presents a risk to health. And obesity, it always begin from, you first begin with body overweight, then you proceed to obesity. And overweight, it is always from 25, that is 25. When we count body mass index, it is always 25 and above, and obesity always begins from 30. That's when somebody is qualified to be obesity, when they have a BMI or a body mass index of 30 and above. Of course, I had a question to ask you. Is really obesity a disease or a choice? Yes, Mark?
I would say it's a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle.
It's a choice, huh?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. By saying that it is a lifestyle, always we choose our lifestyles, and of course, that's why it is really very, very important for us today to see the way how we can control or the way how we can prevent this lifestyle which will lead us to non-communicable diseases by implementing a healthy lifestyle. Let's continue. Of course, we are going to look at our classification of obesity and comorbidities. Of course, we talked about how somebody begins from overweight to obesity. Actually, the normal ranges for our weight, somebody should always range from 18.5 to 24.9. That is the average. Wherever you go over 24.9, you enter 25, meaning that you have entered overweight. And this overweight, it is the same as pre-diabetes, meaning that you're knocking to enter into in a diabetes, of course, in a obesity. Sorry. Eh, Wherever you enter into 25, you're under pre-obesity and you're entering into obesity. So once you reach, of course, pre-obesity moves from 25 to 29.9, meaning that you on increase the risk of developing these conditions or the non-communicable diseases which we have been talking about. Uh, Once you go beyond 29.9, that is now 30 to 34.9, meaning that you have reached obese class 1. And obese class 1, of course, you are under a moderate risk of developing these non-communicable diseases. Uh, Once you go over that, that would be 35 to 39.9. That is severe. Of course, you're severely at risk of developing these conditions, meaning that anytime anything can happen. Then 39 and then 40 and above, that is obese class 3. Obese class 3, those are people who are very severe now, in which at any time these people can even develop a cardiac event or a heart failure, a heart attack, a stroke, and the rest, because they would have accumulated a lot of cholesterol and the rest. Uh, let's continue on our. Of course, this is what I was trying to explain. That somebody who is under 18.5, that one we consider them as they are malnourished or underweight, and somebody to be normal should be in 18.5 to 24.9. Then overweight or pre-obese, that is 25 to 29.9. Then obese begins from 30 to 34.9. Then extremely obese, that's 35 and above. Uh, Always obesity, we have got a challenge in the way that in some people always have body mass. We are different in nature. There are people who are big in nature in the way that they have lean body mass than fats. So sometimes when you put these people on the scale, you find that actually these people, the scale is telling you that they are obese, when in actual sense they are not obese. That's why we go ahead and we take to measure a waist circumference. A waist circumference, we always target the abdomen in the way that the abdomen is always the first part to accumulate these fats, the adipose tissues. So we are going to, of course, it offers more targeted approach to evaluate abdominal accumulation, which is a significant contributor to health risks associated with obesity. So we are going to see the normal waist circumference in the male. Actually, we are supposed to range from 78 to 94 centimeters. As well, female, we are supposed to range from 64 to 80 centimeters. Then overweight or elevated risk, as we had seen in body mass index, that is when a male has a waist circumference of 94 to 102 centimeters, meaning that this person is at an elevated risk of developing non-communicable diseases. And of course, female, that is 80 to 88 centimeters. Then obese will now begin in male 102 and above centimeters. If you are male and you have a waist circumference of above 102, meaning that you're already obese, you're most likely to develop a metabolic syndrome. A metabolic syndrome simply means that your hormones are no longer balancing in your body and they'll fuel you towards the non-communicable diseases or metabolic conditions like diabetes. Uh, of course, for the female, once you're above 88 centimeters, of course, you are at a high risk of developing these conditions because you have now developed obesity fully.
So I wanted to add, it's a good point. Now, someone like Kololo Moses, if you put him on that machine, he might be obese, but he's not actually obese. It's just that he has someone who can have a lot of muscles, as you were saying. So that's why we like to separate these days. Uh, but the West never lies. That's true.
Yeah, thank you very much for the compliment. And maybe we wanted to look about the causatives or the causes of obesity. Hmm? We know very well, as we asked before, that obesity a disease or a choice? Yeah, there are things which are modifiable or which are preventable, and there are those which are not preventable. For example, to some extent, genetics. There are people who can easily become obese. However, it can also still be fueled by our lifestyle changes. So you can be big in nature, but in actual sense, if you embrace a healthy lifestyle, it will always prevent you from obese. However much you are at risk of developing it because of the genetics. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
You are right.
that's true.
So the next we have unhealthy diet, of course, which is a leading cause of obesity actually. Wherever we indulge in eating these excessive fast foods or processed foods, they end up driving us towards obese, as we are going to see in front. We have sedentary lifestyle, oversitting, or relaxing. Let's call it peace. People don't always. We have been talking about sedentary lifestyle, which has dominated, let's say, urban areas here. Of course, people always nowadays move by boda, move by taxis. Those who have cars, they self-drive and go to work. You work while seated, you come back home, you sleep, meaning that the food you always eat is not actually used by the body. Eventually, the fat keeps on converting those excessive glucose in your blood, and you end up becoming obese or accumulating excessive fats in the body. as we had seen the definition of obese. Of course, we also have drug-like drugs. There are certain drugs which we always use, which always also predispose us to obesity. For example, steroids. Steroids or steroid hormones, you have seen people who always say that they are bodybuilders. Actually, they inject themselves with steroids. Not only that, there are also other drugs like contraceptives. Contraceptives, I can say they are the leading cause of obesity here in Uganda in female. Most of the female here in Uganda who are developing obese, they are on these contraceptives as well as together with diet. So we look also let's look at also pregnancy. Pregnancy is known because of it suppressing the estrogen hormone. Of course, it ends up making ladies becoming obese to some extent. Then we also have lack of sleep. Sleep, actually, the current study has found that having less sleep is related to obese in the way that once you lack sleep, actually, there is a way how it strains it actually it increases your cravings towards the fast foods which are highly in caloric, and the more you eat these foods, the more they spike up your glucose levels. And once your glucose levels are spiked up and the body is unable to use them, the fats, the liver now starts converting them into fats. Eventually, you accumulate excessive fats, you become obese. Yeah, I think those are the some of the common causes of obese. Let me see what have I not talked about. Metabolic factors. Metabolic factors that is imbalance in the hormones actually, which can as well be exacerbated by accumulation of fats itself. Medications I talked about, socioeconomic, that is almost a lifestyle, of course, a sedentary lifestyle. Maybe environmental factors, we shall see them in front. Of course, these are things which are within environment which we cannot control. Uh, for example, the industrial fumes, the, the, the pollution, actually things which are related to pollution, cosmetics, yeah, they can also damage our DNA and they trigger fatty storage into our body. We end up becoming obese.
So I wanted to mention socioeconomic status there is an interesting point because obesity was a disease of rich people, but today you might actually say rich people might not be the ones who are mainly obese. It might actually be people who are in the low middle, and
Definitely.
it's because of yes, what someone it's cheaper for someone to buy a Rolex than maybe to buy a healthy food. So the economy is a soda is cheap, but a milk is like 2K. Soda can be like 1K. So the economy is favoring more of this fast food and processed foods. So it's quite ironic.
Also, on that very point, you see when before non-communicable diseases were not there, and when they began coming, people used to identify them as diseases for the rich, simply because it is the rich people who could afford buying these highly processed foods or fast foods, you know. But nowadays, each and everyone is able to buy such a kind of things. For example, let's talk of sugar, cookies, cakes. Anybody can afford them, no? So if you're living in that socio-economic status of, so you'll be able to reach these fast foods or highly processed foods, and the model will drive you towards best. Yeah. Let's also look at psychological factors. Let's say, for example, stress itself,
Mm.
stress and anxieties.
Yeah. Plus also, of
Mm,
course, depression. Because
mm,
one of the symptoms of depression is someone might want to stay at home and not even go out.
mm.
So the more someone gets depressed, the more they become just coach potato, you can call it that. So yeah, psychological factors play a role to an extent.
This group. And, and of course itself, it also affects our hormone imbalance. And the more the hormones are affected, the more we are most likely also to develop obese. Let's continue. We were on factors driving obesity in Uganda. Now, these are the things which we have just seen. Let's say what causes obesity in Uganda. Lifestyle factor, poor diet, and lack of physical activity, which is very known. Which is very known. Hmm? It is known very well. Like for example, here in urban areas, people are embracing this poor diet. They are eating these foods which we have been talking about. At the same time, they are not working out or they are not doing exercises in the way that what they consume is not actually used up, which ends up being converted into fats. We looked at environmental factors, of course, availability of chips, the phones themselves, and other electronics. The unhealthy foods, of course, themselves, they can also lead us to obese. Economic status, economic. Of course, socio-economic factors, we have looked about them, then also cultural factors, fast food culture, sedentary lifestyle.
So it's an interesting point. There was some patient, someone who, I think it was the child who was very obese. These days it's common to see children at schools who are. So someone like nutritionist was advising them, why don't you start managing this child's diet? Person said, but we're not poor. So the culture also plays a big role. The society, the culture of also men and women. There's a lot of expectations in African cultures that if a man has a woman, if he's married, the only true sign of the woman being a good woman is if
The
he,
man is putting on weight.
yes.
Definitely.
So the culture itself encourages.
And of course, nowadays, according to our traditional society, a person who is considered healthy is a person who is the very, you know, which is also a little bit controversial. So here we have a question.
I had a funny experience at work on Friday.
Okay.
One of the people who attended my course stood up and said, Madam, can I ask you a question? I was like, yes, go ahead, say. Do you like tattoos?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think they looked at me and they saw a small person in me and they were thinking, it's a
Mm,
little child.
definitely.
You see, yeah, actually, it's even people can take it negatively and say if when they see losing weight, they will say, "Are you sick? Are you okay?" Some people
Yeah.
think of diabetes, others can even think of HIV. So, yeah, there are a lot of forces you have to fight once you're in this thing of losing weight. Uh, yeah.
So here is a question: as we embrace in unhealthy diet, eating those baggies and cakes, are we eating ourselves into an epidemic? Indeed, it's like we shall be eating ourselves because the more we embrace into them, the more we are going to acquire these non-communicable diseases, and of course, their end results are not okay, and we shall be as if we are just eating ourselves, thinking that we are eating our food. So, of course, we have talked about fast foods. Obesity is caused by long-term positive energy balance. What does it mean? I want to talk about energy intake and energy expenditure. Whatever I talked about that nowadays the main cause of obesity is indulging into eating these fast foods or which are highly caloric. For example, you can look at a cake. A cake itself, once you eat one cake, it has like 10 ingredients within it. For example, there is cooking oil, there is sugar, there is wheat, there is eggs, milk, very many things. So once you eat it, once you eat this cake,
Icing. Yeah, all of that. Yeah.
once you eat this cake, you'll find that it's like you've eaten 2.5 kilograms of rice alone. In the way that however much, so together with being inactive, it will spike up your glucose levels, meaning that your energy intake will be more high than you can use this energy, which will put you in positive energy balance, which will contribute to obesity or accumulation of fats within our body. Yeah. Of course, I wanted to show you how our foods have changed nowadays. Of course, this is from 1950s. 1950s, people used to eat foods which are almost in 7
The size
calories.
of the size
Yes,
of the burgers, the
yes,
chips, they were all
yes.
smaller.
So the calories were too high. But the more we go on proceeding into this
Yeah.
modern life, the more people keeps on increasing the ingredients
Mm.
which are sugar added or added
Even the
sugar.
size. That's why these days you have soda for 5K.
Uh-huh.
Someone can actually just
With a
pick
lot
that,
of calories.
not just yeah.
Yeah, that's how we have changed. That's
Yeah.
why before there were no non-communicable diseases, but now there are non-communicable diseases. So this
Besides becoming the number of customers.
yeah, yeah,
If they
definitely.
even say that KFC will be they will even show the bigger the food. So yeah. So you may not blame them. They are just doing their work.
So
So
this is a graph actually showing the change in dietary habits
My
over
father
time.
made a statement this very one.
yeah.
He was saying it that street is seven, street is seven, street
That's
is six.
that's the one which has the
It's not only for, I think it has 3 pieces of chicken,
yeah,
Mm,
okay.
bottle of soda, and something.
In a
yeah,
It's not for
bucket.
people with families. It's
mm,
also
Yeah,
for people with big stomachs.
it is very true.
it is true actually. It's not even one person can order that bucket. The ones which even have bucket of 10 pieces.
Yeah, of
So
course. I think this graph is similar to the other diet which we had just looked at, and the blue line indicates the carbohydrates, the way how our carbohydrates have been increasing in their calories, according to the way how they prepare them over years. Of course, and the red line indicates also how obese has been accelerating. So you can see that people nowadays they are in 35 to 40, the body mass indexes and above, because the adults. So,
Why
uh,
is it that at the intersection,
mm,
even when the carbs are going down, the red line is increasing?
it's a
of
good
course,
question.
wherever we accumulate a lot of fats in our body, wherever we accumulate, let's say, a lot of fats in our body, we have already become obese. Once we become obese, there is a condition which we always get, which we call a metabolic syndrome, meaning that our body hormones are no longer balancing. in the way that wherever we are already in that state, the body now, the hormones can easily do what? Can easily respond to fat storage eh,
Yeah.
than you can lose
Mm.
actually. Even though you reduce, there are some people whom you'll find this person will tell you that actually I'm eating small, but I don't know where this body is coming from.
Okay, that's a good point because as you've seen in this chart, you are seeing from 2000 from 1995, the thing keeps on increasing the
Yes.
uptake of carbohydrates.
Mm,
So around 2000, even these days, whatever you eat,
mm,
even if it's say it's small, you're still going to be obese. Unlike
definitely.
before you had to eat a lot of food to be
Mm.
obese, but these days,
You
almost
eat
all the
little.
food already has a lot of sugars and carbohydrates.
Mm.
So even though if the carbohydrate has come down, but it has already reached the threshold that
Mm.
whatever you do,
The
you're
body
you're
must.
you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, in a sense. So, yeah,
Then that black line should come again.
yeah.
Otherwise, someone will now start to ask, why should I stop anyway? Because if I stopped,
That's why
It's a good
you have,
question. Yeah,
yeah.
as long as you are interacting with the food, so in a sense you have to stop the food. But as long as you are interacting with the food
Mm.
and you're saying I'm only eating half a plate, you might still be having, you might still be in problems. So
Best example
then
is
there's, I'm from a meeting of women judges, and we had a wellness coach brought on board. So there's a statement she made, which I thought I should also consult with you,
okay.
since we're in the same field. So she was encouraging us to go to them to guide us on how we can cook certain foods in order to lower I think the effects of carbs. And one particular thing she pointed out, she said they can teach us how to cook rice in a manner that can make the rice have less carbs than it would ordinarily have. I found it really strange.
I don't know about that
Is that
science.
possible?
That might be a new
actually,
science.
we can say nowadays there are very many
That we
things.
need to put, I think, about a spoon of coconut oil.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
found it strange because, I mean, this is oil
Mm.
and we are adding it to the rice.
Mm.
So how does
so
it lower the carbs?
maybe she was trying to say because a lot of these oils are healthy on their own, coconut oil, avocado oil, but still the glucose in the rice is not going to go
It
down
is not
just because you have cooked it in a different
Exactly,
way.
that's where my point is.
Yes.
Because it's already rice with glucose and then you're adding
okay.
oil.
Also, a lot of them have maybe she's trying to sell the oil, so she might be also using it as a chance
Those
to.
are things which are not scientifically proven,
Yeah.
and of course, we have met many, even on social medias, even on online. You'll find very many things there. Of course, every day people are emerging, or people are coming out with different strategy for just
Yeah.
beneficial for
Because people are desperate, yeah. So
definitely they
like
need the
maybe
money. So
exploitive, yeah.
somebody will just come up with an idea in the way that when he just wants to indulge in
So
his self
maybe if
benefits.
she said another food, but rice is tricky. But there's some other foods where
Actually, she was
I
specific.
don't know
She
about
said
rice,
rice
but
and coconut oil.
there are other foods where you can cook with oil instead of with that coconut oil or whatever or avocado oil instead of using this other oil which is now in the cherry cans. Maybe
And
that one is a
also, and
different
also another thing which
like
I want,
chapatis. You can make maybe chapatis with that one instead of
but
that.
also another thing which I wanted to put out is about oils. We have talked about health oils, like if we talk of coconut, olive oil. Yes, of course they are healthy, but pick it from me that wherever you, even this healthy oil, wherever you expose it to fire, it oxidizes. And once it oxidizes, it becomes a toxin. That's why these olive oils, it is also not good to put them in the saucepan and you boil them to fry foods. Actually, it will oxidize, it will still become a toxin to your body. Yeah. So I think we can continue. Yeah, we are looking at the projected percentage of adults with obesity by 2035. Of course, we are looking at in 1985, almost there were no data, people were coming to. It keeps on increasing from 10%, it moves from to 14%. Yellow, that is now 15 to 19%, then 20 to 24%, 25 to 24%, sorry, 25 to 29%. Eventually, you can see that by 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 2035, by 2035 almost people, by 40% of the total people in the world will be obese.
Yeah, more
So
than
40% you
the
can
countries.
imagine.
No, okay, it is yes. The countries which are black will be more than 40% of people. Now, can you see
See,
Uganda? I don't know if you can see Uganda there.
Uganda is around the red.
Yeah. Uganda is green. I think so. Would you say?
It is green, yeah, it is
Yeah.
green.
So
Yeah,
Uganda will be.
Why is that so?
yeah, it
Majority
is
of Ugandans
green.
are still poor. So that's a fact. We are not reached the level where you can say Ugandans will be all obese.
Message commando.
Definitely.
Still, the majority are living in a, yes, life is still hard.
Yeah,
But
it
maybe
is still hard.
in the next 50
No,
years,
in urban
yeah.
areas, things already they are going worse.
Because even region wise, now the West maybe, but like now the North, you're still having a lot of malnutrition and all dealing with. Yeah.
And the food stuffs you're having on the market.
Mm.
And all sorts of things.
But if you say now 14% of Uganda, that would be how much? That's like 7 million, maybe. Maybe by then it could even be more than that. It could be 10 million of Uganda, and 10 million is a lot.
So, of course, we talked about environmental factors, but I did not go in details. We are going to talk about endocrine disruptors. Our endocrine, it deals with our hormones. When we talk about endocrine system, we talk about hormones. We have been talking about mismatch in hormones, hormone imbalance, metabolic syndrome. What causes that? Of course, those are the endocrine disruptors, are chemicals that mimic or interfere with body's hormones. They can be natural or man-made and are linked to health problems in both
Wildlife.
wildlife and people. These substances are found in a wide range of products and materials, including cosmetics, plastics, pesticides, and industrial solvents. Of course, these are the things which we have been talking about: fumes, cosmetics, lotions we are using nowadays. Actually, they are endocrine disruptors. Actually, even men, the more we keep on using these cosmetics like lotions, they keep on increasing our estrogen hormones. Yes, So we end up in that hormonal imbalance, which actually predisposes us to metabolic
Yeah, you can say
syndrome.
it's more from the women's side.
Yeah.
The more women use those chemicals, the more they also infect the man. Because now, if when the man touches and you get now those estrogens
Mm.
and those yes, endocrine disruptors.
Yeah.
So infertility is also one of the things which are going high because of that. A lot of men are almost becoming like women.
Yeah.
What is changing? So another interesting part about this point is how much if the mother has been exposed to these disruptors when she was pregnant, even the baby
Mm.
gets them. So the baby is even born when they are fat and they are obese and they have challenges even to lose that weight. I think these days you can see a lot of babies are born when they are huge. Um, Actually, there's a way of also assessing. I think that will be
Mm.
way. It's what we call the anogenital distance. When a baby is born, the distance between the anus and the genitals these days is reducing
Mm.
because of those chemicals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a baby boy can be born with even breast like that, somewhere just because of that. They have gotten a lot of those hormones from the mother.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's why they respond so quickly in developing weight.
Yes. Even from primary school, nursery actually. Yeah.
So let's talk about inflammations, obesity and inflammations. Of course, inflammation is a state of our cells getting sick or tissues and they swell. That is in simple terms. That would mean inflammations. For example, our cells, wherever they are exposed to these toxins, to these endocrine disruptors, the more they get inflamed. And of course, as well as obesity. Obesity, that is accumulation of fats. Wherever you deposit a lot of fats in the body, they begin suffocating your body cells. Your body cells actually they become inflamed or they become sick, they begin swelling, which is inflammation. Of course, let me talk about these adipocytes. Adipocytes, those are fatty cells within our body. Hmm? Adipocytes produce and secrete several proteins called adipokines. And adipokines actually they play a lot of different important roles in our in inflammation actually. So a discrepancy in adipokine secretion has been noted in individuals depending on their body mass index, meaning that once you have a body mass index which is above 30, so your adipocytes will be producing more adipokines which are driving you towards inflammations. Definitely. So obese individuals have adipose tissue that mainly secretes pro-inflammatory adipokines. Pro-inflammatory adipokines actually, this one means that in a layman term, I would say that it increases your immunity highly in the way that your body always reacts, your immunity system always reacts highly without stopping in the way that it will exacerbate the inflammation and damage your tissues or your cells. Yeah. So as well as in people who have less people who have less fats or who have a body mass index less than 30, for them they don't have pro-inflammatory adipokines. Actually, for them they have anti-inflammatory anti-inflammatory adipokines, which help them to control the excessive inflammations. And in that manner, it will be helping the body to it will also protect the cells from being inflamed and the tissues being damaged. Okay, let's continue. We are going to look at the complications of obesity. Obesity has been linked to a number of complications. If untreated for a prolonged period, it may lead to type 2 diabetes. It might also lead to infertility. Of course, we have been talking about how obesity would cause infertility, most especially in female. Once you become obese, it suppresses down your estrogen hormones, and the more you start skipping your periods in the way that it will put you on the risk of being infertility. As well, not only that, but people with obese, they are also at a high risk of developing conditions like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndromes, fibroids, and the rest. So, and the more you have this, the more they increase your risks of becoming infertile.
So one of the symptoms of that condition is, I think you can see it commonly happening these days, for women to start developing hair in the face like beards.
Yeah, yeah,
It's one of the signs of that condition, because the body produces more of testosterone. Yeah.
yeah. So, it is really very serious. For example, we can also look at high blood pressure as another complication of obesity. Whenever we accumulate a lot of fats in our body, the more our cholesterol levels rises up and they start blocking our blood vessels. It gives our heart the work overload. The heart's pace of pumping increases, hence taking us to high blood pressure. We can talk about heart diseases, of course. We have heard of heart attacks, coronary artery diseases. It is because the heart itself it needs blood for it to pump or to perform its duties. But the more you start developing those fatty streaks within the walls of blood vessels, blocking the blood vessels that supplies the heart with blood, meaning that the blood will lose these nutrients for it to continue to pump, eventually it will stop, which is an heart attack. Yeah, so increasing excessive fats in our body or becoming obese, it makes us having heart diseases, then certain cancers. We talked about how excessive accumulation of fats would affect our cells by making them inflamed, and the more they become inflamed or sick, the DNA of those cells will be damaged. That's how the cells mutate or change and they stop responding to the body hormones. Eventually, you'll find these cells, because they are no longer responding to body hormones, they will start growing rapidly and uncontrollable, which is known as a cancer. Yeah. So let's also look at the stroke. Of course, as I said before, the more we accumulate fats in our body, they start blocking our blood vessels, and sometimes there's fatty streaks which always stages within our blood vessels. Sometimes they erupt or they burst off. Once they burst off, actually where they have left, it always bleeds. Let's say, for example, if it was in the carotid arteries within our neck, which supplies blood to the brain, that's how the place within those carotid artery will bleed. After bleeding, this blood will form a clot and it will move towards the brain in the way that it can easily block the small capillaries that supplies the brain cells with nutrients. Eventually, it leads you to have a stroke or to get a stroke. Let's talk about gallbladder. Of course, excessive accumulation of fats, they can easily cover that gallbladder. It reduces its functions, or it blocks the tube where the bile always passes. So you end up losing the functionality of the bile, leading to diseases like cholecystitis or jaundice, of course. So let's talk about uh, fatty liver disease. Yeah, of course, wherever we deposit fats, we don't only deposit them in our blood vessels or in our body, but fats also deposit on our inner organs, like the fats, like the liver. So very many people nowadays they are having these liver fatty diseases due to poor healthy lifestyle. And the more you post those fats, the more you get that disease. High cholesterol levels is self-explanatory. The more we deposit fats, the more our cholesterol levels increases. Sleep apnea, it is a condition actually which always happens to people. Whenever they sleep at night, they start snoring. It's because you have deposited a lot of fats within your body, you're obese, and you also have the other inflammatory adipokines which we are talking about, meaning your body can over inflame. Eh, Wherever it over inflame over swells, it blocks the airway. That's why you sleep at night and you begin snoring. And it is a medical condition called sleep
When
apnea.
someone even wakes up, they will tell you they wake up at night a couple of times. So in the morning, they also sleep because they have not slept well.
definitely. So let's talk about chronic back pains. Of course, the more we deposit a lot of fats, meaning that our bones will be unable to carry the body we have. Eventually, the strains are always put on our joints or on our backbone joints. Eventually, you'll experience those back pains. You get conditions like lumbar disc prolapse. You find your discs are leaving their positions because of the weight you're carrying, which they are not supposed to carry.
It's very common these days.
Mm.
Someone has.
So, of course, arthritis, the same applies to the knees. Arthritis, it is the inflammations of the knees, meaning that the knees will carry a lot of weight than they can endure. Eventually, the cartilages, which are supposed to separate the two bones, they start wearing off. The bones starts getting into contact. They begin to swell, definitely. So less osteoarthritis, that is also the bones also starts getting
Inflammation.
inflamed, particularly the knees. Let's move. Obesity in Uganda, the growing concern. Uganda is witnessing a rise in obesity, especially in urban areas. According to the World Health Organization, obesity rate in Uganda have increased by 10% in the last decade. Currently, currently accounting to 20.8% in female and 9.2% in male, meaning that ladies are becoming more obese than men. Hmm?
Eat a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, the last time the newspaper showed half of women in Kampala are obese because of
Mm.
this.
So urban areas have higher obesity rates driven by sedentary lifestyle and fast food culture, as we had discussed before. So the burden on the healthcare system, the cost of obesity, impact on Uganda's health system. Obesity is driving up healthcare costs due to related chronic diseases. Of course, nowadays managing these non-communicable diseases, it is very, very cost and expensive. To diagnose you with a cancer today, it is really very, very expensive in the way that an ordinary person might not afford. Uganda faces increasing pressure to address obesity as part of its public health strategy, but the government has also started introducing health campaigns, but there is still much to do. They are failing up in the way that even the current healthcare system, some of these concepts, they don't mention about them. They are after diagnosis to give you drugs
Because they
without.
told us to eat cassava.
Mm. Actually, they always try
Mm.
to hint about healthy diet, but they are not
Yeah,
specific in the way that
Cassava have a lot of carbs.
mm, in the
it's a challenge.
in hospitals they always try to give a hint about healthy diet, but they are not specific in the way that wherever people hear about healthy diet, for them they think that eating the other chicken or eating the other cakes and the rest, they would be eating well, which actually exacerbates their health.
Actually, the other sad thing is that you see a doctor and he's even more obese than you. Now,
Definitely.
how would you listen to their advice? Yeah, actually, there's a doctor. Anyway, it was a whole government hospital. The man was sitting, but it's like he had a table in front of him.
The
So
abdomen was on the table.
it's a challenge.
So, this is a call to action to prevent a future health crisis. We must take a broad step now so that we can save the future actually. The burden on the healthcare system, the cost of obesity,
Yeah,
but
but
in Uganda, that one I've already whatever did. We can continue and we see the how we can prevent obesity is through avoiding stress, getting enough sleep, stop eating fast foods, do physical activities, eat more fruits and vegetables, get rid of bad habits like alcohol, smoking, or, or embracing these drugs,
Yeah, but that's
definitely. And then we have,
That's
a
great.
big challenge. This screening.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, especially
yeah.
for the youth now.
Mm.
The telephone and it's perfect for them.
Even this now in the workplace, there are good policies that really can't accommodate us like you.
Definitely.
You have to sit in front of the computer.
The e-governance, everything you're doing online. So
That is it.
So is the government support obesity?
So
The question.
there is a lot to do still when it comes to the government, of course.
I understand.
So thank you for attending, and we believe that a small change today can lead to a healthier future. So we are open for questions. Any questions?
Yes, thank you. See?
I'm having a challenge
Okay.
against my children's diet, a healthier diet. I wonder how much food is, especially when I cook for them vegetables.
Mm.
So, that thing is yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Someone will tell you, for me, God. The day I told me, for me, God made me when I don't eat that thing. So I don't know how I can help them actually.
Uh, the most
Yet I feel this is the stage at which I should be able to introduce them to
Right.
diet.
Yes.
uh, actually the most important thing which I can talk about, like for the children, yes, for a person who has already developed overweight, obese, there is how we see the how we can deprive them from, to some extent, excessive intake of carbohydrates or calories, and whereby we restrict. But for the case of children, they need carbohydrates. But the carbohydrates actually they need, those are the healthy carbohydrates. Let's say, for example, the whole grain carbohydrates. Let's say once you have to prepare, look into these seeds, the whole grain carbohydrates, than choosing the baggies, they call them and French fries, such a
Chips.
kind of chips. Actually, those ones are not okay. But the more you look into these natural foods, actually fruits also have a lot of carbohydrates and they are natural in the way that the body is able to process them than these other processed foods.
So to supplement this point, it's a good question actually. I think even yes, last week I was seeing childhood obesity. Either it was in Daily Monitor or in New Vision, one of them was showing how much schools now kids are becoming obese, and it's a big challenge. And I think the way you said, the kids have already adopted the mindset of Western food, that unless the food is salty, crunchy, it's not really food. So it's a challenge, and I think. Also, the breakdown of home cooked food has contributed to that. Now that a lot of parents are working or children are at school, there is lack of that the lack of that home cooked food. But I
Yes,
think as long as a parent you are putting the effort, yeah, ideally you're not supposed to negotiate. I think with the kids, even since you are the one cooking and they're not paying rent, there has to be. But even as a parent, you're cheating also. No, you cannot. You cannot practice. You cannot practice what you don't preach. What you preach in a sense. So,
actually,
yeah,
that's
Just
why,
God making money doesn't eat that young food.
and that's why we are seeing more prevalence of obese.
yeah.
That's why we are
Especially
also
boys.
seeing that
Anyway,
prevalence of obesity in
that,
childhood.
yeah. Maybe exercise. The other part is someone can be eating, but are they putting the efforts? Are they? Is he playing maybe football, running around? Because if you are eating a lot and you are sitting also
Definitely.
playing video games,
Mhm.
no, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if a
Parenting
child is
has.
also very active and doing a lot of exercises, of course, it also helps them to burn off
Yeah.
those excessive calories within the body, since their cells are still very sensitive to insulin. Yeah.
But yeah, it is really a challenge. Childhood obesity is a challenge, and I think it also tells a lot about how even the parenting has changed, even the culture, the kids, the exposure. They are seeing a lot of things on social media. They have expectations.
Hot dogs.
Yeah, so it's a
Eh,
whole new.
there was a week when gummy bears had become gummy bears. I want gummy bears. I said, yeah, I don't know those things.
So what a child is eating in New York for them, they also want to eat now because
Now
it's a
this thing
global village.
of liberalism in schools.
Mm.
So parents give to their kids every kind of thing. Now when the child sees it,
Mm.
they come home demanding,
Mm. It is
and they
very
will
true.
never allow you to sleep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. On the other end, even that's why we have a lot of mental health issues now at schools. You can hear kids committing suicide because of the systems have weakened. Parents can be tough on teachers, not the kids. Like now, why are you beating my child? So even some teachers are already careful not to mess around. So, but I think as a parent, you really have to just see what you can enforce. But at the end of the day, it's them to choose. Everyone has that choice, even as kids, in the long run. Because,
Uh,
mm,
Actually, when you come back to children, it is an interesting story. Non-communicable diseases has been known in only elder people, but nowadays they're even attacking children. You find a child who is obese at 12 years
There's a judge
is
whose
becoming
child is 12
diabetic.
years and history.
Thank you. So,
yeah,
child becomes obese at 12, it becomes diabetic at
yeah,
12 years. Yeah, you find a baby girl is starting to ovulate or going into menstrual cycles
it's a good
at
sign.
8 years,
It's a
you
good
know.
point, yes.
So all are driven by obesity.
Yeah, the hormones.
Actually, my biggest challenge is my boy. At least the girl will eat. The girl eats the vegetables, you give her, she will eat them. The fruits she eats, but the boy, since for him, God made him that way. When he doesn't eat those things.
Yeah.
And he will assure you confidently, for me, that's how God made me. I don't eat them.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Parenting in 21st century. I think that will be a discussion for another day. It's a long one, but I appreciate. Okay.
Otherwise, thank you for coming. Thank you for
Thank you so
attending.
much.
I think we can go for some
It's been a lot
exercise
to learn.
sessions.
Let me just take from my workout clothes.
Okay.